So good afternoon, partners. I am Chris Salvador from VSTECS, Product Manager for Alibaba Cloud. So welcome to our Alibaba Cloud Security Introduction Partner Enablement. So I would like to acknowledge the presence of our vendor from Alibaba Cloud. We have Ms. Hannah De Vera, Partner Manager,
Good afternoon, partners.
and Miko Repolio, our Regional Solutions Architect.
Hi guys, magandang hapon.
Support and your presence is highly appreciated. So from VSTECS, we have Christine Payomo, Channel Sales Executive in charge of partner management, and Gon Perdigon, Product Solutions Engineer, and our speaker for today.
Hi everyone.
About Alibaba Cloud Security. So data security and user privacy are the top priorities of Alibaba Cloud. So Alibaba Cloud strives to provide customers with consistent, reliable, secure, and compliant cloud computing services. So helping customers ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of their systems and data. So protecting over 2 million companies worldwide for over a decade gives Alibaba Cloud vast amounts of experience in using the massive amount of network traffic at its disposal to identify security threats and develop solutions. So join us for an insightful day of learning. Please make sure to stay until the end as we will be having Kahoot and raffle prizes.
All right. Good day, everybody. By the way, I am Gon Perdigon, the Solutions Engineer here at VSTCS for Alibaba Cloud, and we will tackle about the security introduction of Alibaba Cloud. So let me just, guys, I will close my screen so that you know that there will be a faster speed of the internet. So just look at my first on the first time. Thank you. All right, so welcome to Introduction to Security. So in this section, we'll take a look at the Alibaba Cloud Security products. We'll have an overview of the host data network and application security. But before that, we'll start with a brief introduction. I want to introduce you to Alibaba Cloud's platform security model. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm talking about the I'm talking about the shared responsibility model that we use to separate customer responsibilities from Alibaba Cloud responsibilities, which you can see in this diagram here. At the bottom layer, in yellow, we have things that are responsibility of Alibaba Cloud. So from a security standpoint, Alibaba Cloud is responsible for the physical security of our data centers, the security of the hardware in those data centers, the security of the cloud platform itself, the integrity of the account system that you use to log in, the security of each cloud services that we build and deploy, and then the virtualization layer security. So the security of the service that launches and schedules virtual machines, all those things in yellow at the bottom area, as you can see, are Alibaba Cloud's responsibility. And those on top of that, we have things that are customers' responsibilities. So you as users of Alibaba Cloud need to worry about the things in orange. If you have a security issue with any of those things shown in orange, here then the responsibility to resolve that security issue. And now that's on you, but that includes the data security, network security, virtual machine security. That means the security of the operating system in the VM application security. So this security of any application that you've deployed, operational security. So who is allowed to do what and when you're responsible for setting those permissions, and businesses security, you need to make sure that you understand the risks that apply to the application that you want to deploy. And then your business structure and logic is built in a way where your application can sustainably run without any major security incidents. Those things are all your responsibility as the customer. We will help you deal with the with the hardware, physical, and platform security underneath all of that, of course. So here we see the Alibaba Cloud security architecture in a little bit more detail. So you can see it again at the very bottom. There is a cloud platform security. On those things are Alibaba responsibilities. And then on top of that, there's user infrastructure, user data, user application, user business. Those things are the user's responsibility. So you need to, again, ensure that any containers or VM you're running are safe. Their network configuration is compliant and safe. That they're using encryption to secure data at rest. User account security, although, oops, sorry. It's not easy to tell from this slide and the previous slide. User account security is a shared responsibility. The security and integrity of the Alibaba Cloud account system is our responsibility. But of course, as the users, it is your responsibility to turn on the multi-factor authentication and choose a strong password. And be careful about who you grant privileges. So when you need to create them users, there's a security monitoring and operations on that way. Now, all right, now on this template, although as its chart, it might seem like Alibaba Group is an e-commerce company, but really a data company. And Alibaba Cloud is only forefront of protecting our user data from attackers. And we currently lead the cloud security market in China. We protect here on the template for 40% of websites that are hosted where we mitigate 3.6 million or billion rather. As you can see, yes, it's a billion. It's attacks each day, and we defend against upwards of 1,500 DDoS attacks every day with a total volume of more than a terabyte per second. On average, that's the 2018 figure. It's probably higher now. We quarantine something like 140K or 140,000 malicious files that were detected being installed on ECS instances each day. Again, that's for users who have failed to secure their instances. They may be vulnerable to viruses, Trojans, and we have a security center tool that can help to detect. And it does more than 140,000 times a day. It helps protect users against Trojan viruses and other malicious software being installed on other ECS instances. All right, now our security expertise comes from our own hard-won experience. We've now been running the Double 11 Sales Festival for more than 10 years, and we have multiple different Alibaba businesses unit depending on Alibaba Cloud, and keep them up and running. That includes Shine Now or Sign Now or whatever you wanted to call it for logistics. All of our e-commerce platforms, Alibaba, AliExpress, 1688, Tmail, and Taobao, as well as or Ant Financial, which is in charge of microloans, Alipay insurances, and also several other banking related products. So all three of those major components within the company all depends on Alibaba Cloud for security. On the last year's Double 11, that's an example of holiday for them. So from 2018, Double 11 alone, we receive an attack. Alibaba Cloud received an attack traffic from more than 194 different countries in China, including, of course, with over around 5,000 DDoS attacks launched during the single day. So as you can see, we were a very popular attack target during the Double 11 sale over and above our usual high level of attacks that we experience day to day. On that one day, we actually received over 2 billion attacks from the public internet. And despite that high of level of attacks, we were still able to keep our service up and running smoothly for our users with no data loss and of course, no downtime. So Now that I've painted a picture of Alibaba Cloud's own security background, let's get into the host security and see what capabilities we can offer to end users in that domain. All right, so starting with host security section. Um, the- so let's take a look at what Alibaba Cloud can offer in the host security domain. Our primary product offering is something we call Security Center. If you've been an Alibaba Cloud user for a long time, you'll recall that we used to have separate products called TDS, Threat Detection Service, and also Server Guard. It's like if you're familiar with Aliyun and Aliyun Dun. So what happened is TDS and Server Guard have been combined into one product, and that is Security Center. Let's dive into it and see how it works. So being on the cloud really forces you to redefine how you perform security operations. You go from an off-cloud environment where you've got lots of custom monitoring and metrics, and you might be generating thousands of alerts a day. You need to bring down a more manageable number. You need to really decide what the real threats are and focus on those things. So typically we have customers migrated to cloud. They go from environment where they're receiving thousands of alarms per day down to 20 or 30. You also need to improve your response time. Actually, this is something that is just being on the cloud helps you with. Well, thanks mainly to the automation itself, but you can take response times down from days to minutes using tools like Terraform, for instance, by executing response plan, identifying impacts, reproducing an intrusion, alert, correlation, and eliminate false positives. All things you can do from now in the cloud. So with the help of built-in standardized tools, of course, because so many of these things can be automated when you move on to cloud. Your security operations team can usually shrink. Now, it might be possible to have a single engineer who's running your entire cloud platform, but that's the challenge because this person must also have an architectural developer duties that would get in the way of managing vulnerabilities and dealing with security and patching. So how you give this person a tool to stay on top of everything, right? Okay, now let's start by looking at this best practices. Essentially, you should spend around 90% of your time on hardening before something goes wrong. Then you will only have to spend 10% of your time fixing issues when they pop up. So there's three components here to a good security model: prevention, detection, and response. So here, prevention mostly means hardening, vulnerability management, configuring security baselines that are solid cloud service configurations, tamper proofing, providing yourself with protection against crypto jacking through regular backups. And then you can move from prevention into detection. That means monitoring and blocking attacks as they occur. We're talking about avoiding leaking access keys, making sure you have an antivirus software installed, and of course, up to date in running a system baseline analysis. Now, this is where you look to see if the configuration for any of these key pieces of software on your server has changed. So intrusion detection, situational analysis, and of course, whitelisting and blacklisting of applications. And then finally, there's response, of course. So prevention tries to keep you from getting attacked in the first place. Detection lets you discover and block the attack as it happened. And then response is what you do after an attack. Of course, it's when the attack is successful, you do the response. But this is actually a very important part of your security strategy because you need to know what the nature of the attack was if you're going to avoid it. and the future. So we have tools built into Security Center that help you with automated root cause analysis. And of course, there is a solid asset fingerprint and log analysis tool built into Security Center to help you determine where things went wrong. So here, the traditional method for dealing with security threats is a manual method. So you collect logs into some type of SIEM system, SIEM, that sends alerts to your operations personnel, and then they configure firewall rules, at host rules that are designed to mitigate threats that have been discovered via log collection, and that's a process that can take hours to days to implement on the cloud. So now in the cloud, you can fully automate this. This is one of the key advantages of moving into cloud platform. The host and of course the firewall can be connected to Cloud Security Center, and Security Center itself can make decisions about how to adjust these rules in order to prevent threats as they pop out. So Alibaba Cloud Security Center aims to be a one-stop security platform for host protection. But we currently use this platform, the Security Center, to fix around 8.3 million high-risk vulnerabilities a year. And we've actually, as a result of having the Security Center installing in place in production, we've been able to initiate 79 emergency responses based on threats that we discovered through security centers. So we've been able to detect and patch threads in an emergency thanks to having this tool deployed. Part of the reason we're able to do this because our platform is so large and we collect so much data. We can actually do threat analysis and detection using data analytic tools. So we collect more than a petabyte worth of new threat intelligence of log data a day. And below, sleep through that and used to detect new attacks that we feed that information back into the security center to improve it further. Are currently serving about 1 million enterprise on Alibaba Cloud. And by default, they're all protected by Security Center because this is something that you get for free. Yes, it's for free. At least the server guard component of it's free. This is something you get for free when you turn on your account. So again, remember the service is free when you turn on your account. All right, now a big advantage of Security Center over a traditional architecture is that in traditional security architecture, sandboxing, potentially the firewall antivirus software, those things have been installed directly on the endpoint. So you have to put all of that heavy duty software onto the server that you want to protect in cloud native architecture, where you have on your endpoints your actual servers or virtual machines. It's an agent. This is a lightweight process that sends information somewhere else into HIDs or antivirus service, and then get responses back from the service. But this takes a lot of load off the endpoint of your virtual machine itself, which gives you a lower resource consumption for the same level of protection. Also, because the Cloud Firewall Security Group feature is not part of the endpoint software firewall, because that's actually something that's provided separately as Alibaba Cloud Service. There's less of a hit on the network performance as well. Of course, it's actually enough to have the best tools if you don't use them right. So we must recommend some best practices related to securing your infrastructure. First, of course, is to have a strong password strategy. Your passwords at minimum should be at least 8 characters. Well, in fact, Jeremy Peterson, one of their trainers, just said that he actually recommends that you don't even use a password at all. You're much better off using SSH keys, and wherever possible, and you should rotate them for every 90 days and avoid reusing the old passwords. Definitely turn on your two-factor authentication, for this is important. Another level of protection. Not if you're using an SSH key. It might be a good idea to password protect the SSH key if you're using the console, the web user interface. It's probably a good idea to turn on a multi-factor authentication so you don't have to type a 6-digit code from your phone each time you log into your account, right? So network security, you should make sure that the remote management ports such as the SSH and the RDP, or the remote desktop, are not, the RDP are not open to the internet. They should be closed as possible, and you should always try to use encrypted protocols. So don't use FTP, use SFTP. Never ever use Telnet. Is at this age, make sure you're using secure communication protocols, and use the host firewall to enhance network access control if you feel you need the extra layer of protection, of course. We do have methods for protecting machines that are in Alibaba Cloud Network group. That's called a security group, but it's essentially like a firewall that lives outside of your host instance sets. It sets in a virtual firewall. You should also consider turning off the host firewall. That's actually part of the OS, or the operating system of your ECS instance as well. So one of the core components of the security center is the agent. This is actually the component that I referred to before as the server guard. It contains two processes. One of them is Ali Yun Dun. This is the Ali Shield in Chinese. Ali Yun is, of course, Alibaba Cloud. And Dun is Shield. So it's the Ali Shield and Ali Yun Dun update, which is the updater service of the server guard agent. In the Linux system, this process is run under the root count in the Windows systems. So they run with the system account that, of course, you can see here on the slide, where these files are located on either system. This is not a resource intensive tool of when it's not memory occupied. If those limits are exceeded, server guard agent will suspend itself and then wait for a quieter time and try again to avoid interfering with any production workload that your instance might be running. So Security Center includes essentially 4 different types of features. There's patch management, Trojan scans, health checks, hardening, and attack interceptions. Let's start from the left and then go to the right. So under patch management, Security Center has the ability to detect common motor abilities in web CRM systems in Linux and Windows, and it also warns you when a server needs to be patched. It also has a quicker repair tool, which you can use to automatically execute and update the process on some instances, and a 0-day app fix option that can be used to implement temporary protections. These are protections against attacks that have no patch yet. So Trojan scan. Security Center can detect web shells uploads and also detect Trojans that have been installed on your ECS instances. And it can quarantine them for you. Health checks and hardening Security Center lets you check the security configuration of your instances. It can warn you about changes in configuration, or it can also give suggestions for ways to improve or harden the security settings on your servers. And it can detect some types of backdoors in terms of attack. Interception Security Center is able to detect brute force attacks, so attempts to guess a password, and also it can audit log in behavior, so it can check for very unusual login, so that there's someone might be logging in from a new location, for someone logging in an unusual time of day. So within the security center itself, you can actually run a health status check that will give you a quick general overview of the health of your ACS instances. All right, so another security center cooler feature is the ability to fix vulnerabilities without downtime. And in most automated way, so you can see on the left, the traditional way that you approach your vulnerability. It would be after you detect and make an evaluation, figure out what you need to do to fix it, plan your system downtime, make a backup patch, the software on the machine, reboot the machine, make sure everything is working, and then release it back into the production environment where it can serve traffic. And of course, that's all a lot of work, and all those steps have to be manually done. In Security Center, however, you can automate most of the identified and the vulnerability you want to fix. Then you select the instance you want to fix. And from that point on, the process, it's mostly automated. So let's say you want to fix an instance. Let's say, for example, an instance A. So what you'll do is you'll select the instance and you'll say, I want to patch this instance. And from that point, the Security Center will take a snapshot of instance A, create an instance B, a new instance based on the snapshot, take the public IP from instance A, and attach it to B, validate, restart instance B, run automatic checks, unbind the elastic IP, and then rebind to A, and then delete the B. So it goes through the entire cycle of fixing the validating instance A. So it's validating the instance A without actually ever having any downtime, because when instance A is being fixed, instance B can serve live traffic. So there's always at least one instance up and running, serving the traffic at any given time. So no downtimes. Now, Security Center also gives you a built-in baseline check tool. At this, it can help you determine not just problems that exist in configuring your ECS instances, but also on your OSS buckets and RDS database. There are baselines available for databases, operating systems or OS, weak passwords, middleware, services. We cover the CIS benchmarks and NOPS if you're actually a Go China customer. So we do have a regulatory and compliance benchmark coverage, and there's a baseline-based vulnerability hardening as well. You can patch host in a batch, and you can patch with a snapshot for a better protection. So this is the first service of its kind, at least available in China region. Now let's take a look at patch management. All right, so patch management. So patch management is a special function of Alibaba Cloud Security Center. Allows you to automate the process of patching your ECS instances. It helps fix system vulnerabilities, especially those found in the popular CMS systems. So if you're running a popular CMS like WordPress, we can help you to patch that automatically. There's only one downside, a server guard, which is the host monitoring component of Security Center. It can work with servers that are not hosted on Alibaba Cloud. But that's not true for patch management. For patch management, your servers must be ECS instances hosted on Alibaba Cloud. Cloud's platform. So that's for patch management. All right, now Security Center provides a rich monitoring dashboard, as you can see on the template, but gives you a complete information about all security threats you face across all of your resources in all of your Alibaba Cloud regions. So this is a global dashboard where you can see any unexpected assets, baseline, risks, and vulnerabilities or security events that have occurred under your account worldwide. In vulnerability management, here you can see a list of vulnerabilities that are servers are susceptible to. And there's three categories: low, medium, and critical. But we can scan for vulnerabilities in common web CMS systems in Windows and in Linux. You can choose different types of vulnerabilities actually to check for as well from the settings pane. And in Security Center, you can decide if you want to check for all Linux and Windows vulnerabilities or just web CMS or just emergency vulnerabilities. So these are things that are critical or just some come out. Well, normally Jeremy Peterson normally tells you that he usually turn all of this on. So there's also a built-in configuration baseline check. So this can give you interesting and valuable information about the software configuration of your ECS instances. So for instance, you have a weak password or maybe your CentOS or CentOS system baseline is set up in such a way that it's not secure. Maybe it accepts traffic on port 80 and you've set a baseline rule to check for that. You could make those kind of configurations from the baseline check area in the Security Center console. If you're not happy with the baseline checks that are built into your Security Center, you can make your own. So you could take any of the check items listed in the configured policy section of the Security Center console and use them to build custom baseline checking policies. So here, see. Okay, now in notifications, there are several different ways to get notified if an event occurs or there is a vulnerability you need to be aware of. But based on the severity of the vulnerability, you can choose to get different types of alerts. The default mode for all types of alerts is normally email or usually email. Now, one of the favorite features in Security Center is the asset footprint. So this can look at the processes account, listing ports, installed software, and potential backdoors. So this is a great way to get into overall view, high-level view of what services are running on, which of your servers, which software is actually running on, which of your servers and which accounts are allowed to log in. And this can be very valuable in finding ways to reduce your attack surface. Now, Security Center has a built-in log retrieval and storage. By default, logs are stored for 6 months, and you can use the built-in log search and then the log analysis tools to go through your logs and assess the scope and impact of any damage that might have occurred as a result of an attack. So this is a full SaaS or full SaaS-based log retrieval platform. There's nothing to install, nothing for you to maintain. It's just there. And it supports basic logical expressions like Boolean expressions. When you search, when you're searching, but you can search along up to 50 different dimensions, and you can get results back within a few seconds, not minutes, but seconds. So it's a very powerful search and retrieval tool. We'll continue on our discussion now. So we'll start with network security. All right, so we'll start by looking at the VPC, um, specifically security groups, which are functions inside of the VPCs. All right, so the security group essentially is a set of firewall rules, um, either allowed or denied traffic. Each ECS instances that you create has to be a member of at least one security group. This is essentially the firewall pool that built this one. And well, again, this is essentially the firewall pool that built in the Alibaba Cloud VPCs. So a VPC, again, is a private network group that your ECS instances live inside of. So security group rules includes the following information. There's the action rule type, which is whether to accept or block the traffic. There's the port range. The rule applies to this. Could be a single port like 80 or 443, or it could be a port range, any port range. The protocol, which will be the one of ICMP, TCP, or UDP. And then the authorization objects. This is the security group ID or IP address range that we want to accept or maybe block. This is really that simple, but it's essentially just the same thing as the firewall you might install on yourself on a host like Ubuntu, Linux. We'll move on to the anti-DDoS service. So, all right. So in order to discuss this anti-DDoS, we need to talk about what is DDoS attack. So DDoS stands for distributed denial of service. This is the type of attack wherein attacker takes in control of thousands or potential tens or hundreds of thousands of computers, which is often called zombies, and uses those computers to simultaneously access a particular site. That site becomes the victim. If the attacker controls enough computers to generate a very large amount of network traffic, this can have a effect of causing the victim website to no longer be available to respond to legitimate requests. That's why it's called denial of service. People who are trying to use the service ordinarily or normally are denied, hence the denial of service, of course. This is one of the hardest types of attacks to block because as long as the attacker has enough resources at her or his disposal, the attacker can essentially take down any target site simply by saturating all of the network links, as saturating the compute and network capacity at the victim, and there's a very little you can do effectively to block a DDoS attack, because the attacks coming from the tens or hundreds of thousands of distinct computers with several IPs distributed around different types of the world. So there is no simply rule that you can use to block the DDoS attack. There we go. There's actually many types of attacks in DDoS. So attacks, so let's see. Okay, next template would be in DDoS attacks. So this is just a simple attack called SynFlood or SYN flood. All right, if you're familiar with that. So you're familiar with the TCP protocol, the SYN. The SYN is actually the first packet that you send when you first try to establish a connection with a server. So you're doing the TCP three-way handshake to establish connection between you and another computer. The first thing you do is to send a SYN. What the server will do, will open a port for you, make a note of your IP address, and then send back a SYN plus and an acknowledgement. So when you receive that, you have to send back a final acknowledgement to open the TCP connection. So how does this attack work in the SynFlood DDoS attack? So what you do is you get 100 of thousands of machines to all send an SYN or a SYN to a server. So they all send a SYN and they'll listen to the SYN plus act or SYN plus acknowledgement. But here's the interesting part. You don't respond with the final acknowledgement. So what happened is the server sitting there waiting for the acknowledgement never comes. And of course, there are a limited number of port numbers available for the server to use. So eventually, the server runs out of port numbers. That's no longer available to respond to the legitimate request. That's how SYN flood overwhelms the target server, right? So we have a tool called AntiDdos or DDoS, Alibaba Cloud AntiDDoS DDoS. That is designed to filter out attack traffics, and it works on multiple different types of DDoS attacks. We just learned about the SYN floods, but there's many types at both layer for the network layer and also a few at the layer 7. So HTTP and HTTPS as well as various types of WebSockets attacks. So anti-DDoS is a set of techniques, best practices, tools, and systems for resisting or mitigating the impact of distributed denial of service attacks on internet facing applications by actually protecting the target at any relay networks. So anti-DDoS is a layer 4 and a layer 7 service, and it is not designed to defend against all types of attacks. However, it will work on most of the popular types of DDoS attacks that are normally used today. So you can see at the bottom of the slide, we have an architecture diagram here. DNS, your DNS service can be with any vendor. It doesn't have to be with all the Alibaba Cloud. What you do is you modify the DNS record for your site so that it resolves the CNAME of our anti-DDoS scrubbing center. The anti-DDoS scrubbing center then takes all incoming traffic, matches it against some heuristics that you built to detect attacks, and discards any traffic that matches the patterns that the anti-DDoS knows, look for, and passes the remaining clean traffic back to your backend server load balancer or maybe ECS instance. And of course, the backend origin site doesn't actually need to be on Alibaba Cloud itself. It could be on AWS or maybe Google or another provider. It just needs to have a public network interface. There's 3 versions actually of anti-DDoS on Alibaba Cloud. There is the anti-DDoS Basic, Pro, and Premium. Well, that's how we split things up. So I'll explain what's the difference between those 3, but all of them serve more or less the same function, of course, which is to protect you from DDoS attacks without having to make major changes to the architecture of your application. So let's look at the difference between AntiDdos Premium and AntiDdos Pro. Okay. These are professional and or enterprise editions of our anti-DDoS service. I won't discuss anti-DDoS Basic because that's built in our Alibaba Cloud platform. That's for free, guys. It's for free. The basic DDoS is actually free in Alibaba every time you purchase it, a subscription. Okay, so if you're using RDS database service or ECS or OSS, you already have anti-DDoS Basic built in for free. All right. So let's discuss just the enterprise editions. Here, Premium and Pro. Well, but the difference has to do with whether or not your site is deployed in mainland China. If your site is deployed in mainland China, then you'll be using AntiDdos Pro. This uses a BGP routing tricks to do very cool things like allow you to switch the anti-DDoS protection on and off on demand, and so you can turn it on only when um, an attack is detected. It supports multiple domains and ports, any permanent static public IP. So that's a very cool feature. Your backend service, your origin server, can have a permanent static IP and still be defended by AntiDdos Pro. It doesn't need to hide behind a scrubbing center. The mitigation capacity for AntiDdos Pro is 10 terabits per second. AntiDdos Premium relies instead on filtering methods. That's based on any CAS, but this is what we use outside China. So this means outside China, of China mainland. So that would include Macau or Hong Kong. So outside of the Chinese mainland, we normally use AntiDdos Premium, which has 5 terabyte per second mitigation capacity and lacks a few of the cooler BGP related features of Pro, but still powerful and versatile anti-DDoS tool. So how does anti-DDoS service work? Well, again, there's some slight differences between Pro and Premium, but in general, in order to mitigate a DDoS attack, you need to be able to absorb and process all of the attack traffic. So need the capability to absorb all of the attack traffic, analyze it, determine which traffic constitutes part of the attack and which does not, and then pass the clean traffic, the non-attack traffic back to the origin behind your anti-DDoS service. So the way Alibaba Cloud anti-DDoS Premium does is we have 12 scrubbing centers worldwide, which provides 10 terabits per second of DDoS scrubbing capacity. We use any cast so that we can support essentially protect you against some types of layer 7 attacks, such as the famous HTTP flood, if you're familiar with that. All right, so let's look at a real case here. So this is an attack that takes advantage of let's call it a design flow in Memcache D. So Memcache D is a service on Linux that is used as an in-memory cache, typically in front of a database, in order to speed up database access. So it's an memory key value store, and it's not designed to be exposed to the internet. So what does the design flow that I'm talking about, where the design flow is that it doesn't have an authentication mechanism. It's possible to configure Memcache so that it will respond to any request at all. And it's listening on port 11 and accept UDP traffic. So if you leave this port exposed to the internet and you're running them cache, what an attacker can do is, come along and make a request of your Memcache server with a spoof IP address. When they do this, the response from your Memcache server will not go back to the attacker, but to the attacker's target, which is the spoof IP. What's worse, that is possible to amplify an attack with a Memcache, because Memcache can return multiple responses for a single request. So the attacker can easily multiply their traffic several folds by taking advantage of these features of Memcache. And that's where this attacker in 2018 did. That's why they were able to get their attack traffic up so high. Of course, by today's standards, 758 gigabytes per second is still large, but we do routinely now, attacks over 1 terabit per second. So we're here. An important part of having a reliable anti-DDoS service is analyzing incoming traffic and looking for patterns that might indicate an attack. This really most difficult part of providing DDoS protection. This is something that Alibaba does well because we analyze more than 10 terabytes worth of logs in a network. So that's 10 terabytes worth of logs in a network traffic per day. So we are dealing with a huge volume here, and we take all information that we use, develop an attacker IP blacklist, attack signatures, malicious programs, fingerprints, and list of vulnerabilities, and we feed that information to all our security products, including the DDoS part of the benefit of using anti-DDoS product from Alibaba Cloud. That's we are basing the intelligence of that tool on actual attack traffic that we're analyzing every day. So that tool was actually constantly improving. Okay, now let's now turn our attention. Let's now turn our attention to Cloud Firewall. Mhm. All right, now Cloud Firewall is essentially on a cloud firewall service. So one of the issues you have when you migrate to the cloud is you need to worry about how to manage traffic between public and internal networks. How do you segregate those, and how do you defend against malicious traffic? And then there's form of internal to the public network, how you detect and block at normal outbound connections. That's an issue. So it's not just about defending yourself from the attackers in the internet. It's also detecting unusual outbound connections from your own internet. But you also need to worry about connections between internal networks. How do you control traffic between different private network segments within your own cloud environment? How do you detect access relationships between applications and locate hosts that are doing something unusual? And then between BPCs. So how do you isolate applications on Alibaba Cloud, the region and so on? These are all challenges when you face migration to the cloud. And we have a firewall tool that designed to help you with that, which is Cloud Firewall. Well, Cloud Firewall don't have to deploy any hardware, that you don't have to buy an image from the marketplace. You don't have to modify your routing configuration. You just click enable, and then Cloud Firewall is ready to go. There. So one of the big challenges you face as a security person or a systems admin is gaining insights into network security trends. And this is an area where Cloud Firewall can help you. There's an outbound connection detail overview in the Cloud Firewall console that gives you information about inbound, outbound connections. And there's a cloud network overall report, which tells you about the rates of traffic with a breakdown by protocol and application type. There's also a full audit report, which you can use to fulfill compliance requirements. And there is a network flow visualization that indicates new or unusual connections between different hosts in your Alibaba Cloud environment, as well as built-in intrusion detection that can give you information about potential attacks. All right, now on the next template, so Cloud Firewall features break down into roughly 4 categories. There's prevention, defense, backtracking, and detection. So prevention is all about access control by controlling traffic flow to and from the internet by an isolation between BPCs within your account environment. So we also provide security policies based on domain names, applications, and regions, which you can apply for access control then under defense. There's intrusion prevention. So there's a built-in IPS, there's a built-in intrusion prevention system, and then there's a virtual patching, as well as there's the ability to apply a temporary patch in the event that there's a new vulnerability out, but there's no official patch for yet So backtracking. So there's traffic logs, security logs, and also firewall. Operation logs available. So you can see what actions have been taken both to configure cloud firewall itself and with traffic is flowed to and from various network interfaces um, that are controlled by cloud firewall, of course. And then under detection, you can easily manage all of your IP addresses within a given Alibaba Cloud region monitor, all your outbound connections, and analyze and visualize the traffic from the internet traffic between different security groups. In the next slides that we have, sorry guys if I'm actually compressing it. We have limited time. So on the next slides, we'll take a look at the application and data security. Okay, so all right, so let's now talk about application and data security, starting with application security. All right, so with let's start with application security. Specifically, we're going to talk about Alibaba Cloud's web application firewall. So before we look at the web application firewall itself, let's take a look at some of the attacks that is designed to defend against. So here, so one of the most common attack types is the web shell. This is where an adversary takes advantage of an existing vulnerability in some application that's running on your web server, maybe, to bypass authentication, or maybe they'll use SQL injection and cross-site scripting. But somehow they manage to, gain access to your web server in a way that it allows them to insert an executable file. It's a PHP file. They can then visit the URL of your file on your web server, and it will execute, giving them remote access to the web server, possibly with elevated permissions. That's what you see in the diagram on the slide here. The attacker is actually exploiting a vulnerability to insert the web shell code, maybe a PHP file, and then they're connecting to that remote web shell, and then executing commands using some type of client like the popular CK-Knight Java client, which is essentially designed for taking advantage of web shells. So in general, when we're talking about threats from the network, there are three types of attacks. There's on your left, DDoS attacks, which we talked about earlier when we brought up anti-DDoS, application attacks, and then targeted attacks. So DDoS attacks are the easiest to carry out. They require very little knowledge of your target and just need to know the IP address you want to launch the attack against, and you need to have sufficient resources to overwhelm the target with traffic. Application attacks require more knowledge of the target. So if you're an attacker and you want to carry out an application attack, you need to know what software is running on the server. You want to attack, you need to know what types of attacks it would be vulnerable to. But then again, there's a lot of tools, kits. So if you are an attacker, that can help you get that information and then launch some type of attacks in a fully automated way. So web application firewall is primarily designed to help you deal with this middle box here, this middle circle here, and yellow application attacks. And then on the far right, here on your right side, just for completeness, we included the targeted attacks. These are attacks where the attacker actually spends real time and effort to perform reconnaissance and to learn about you specifically or your system specifically. So as to carry out more effective attack, this would include social engineering. So maybe calling your company to learn who works there and trying to get people to give up access credential by maybe impersonating your IT department, or maybe a reverse engineering attack where the attacker has the access to a copy of softwares that is running on your servers and is able to reverse engineer that software, looking for flaws that they can exploit maybe. Targeted attacks are the most expensive for the attacker. but they're also the hardest to defend against. So in this part of the topic, we'll mainly focus on the application attacks. All right. So there's multiple types of injection attacks. There's HTML injection, SQL injection, expat injection, LDAP injection, first dose of COVID injection. No, just a joke. That's a joke. And okay, I stop at LDAP injection. And then there's like other things like cross state scripting. In most cases, the goal is the same. You're trying to get the web server to store and potentially execute code that it should not. So that's the general idea. We have other security classes where we go into more detail about in this discussion. So we're only going to discuss how WAF or WAF defends against these attacks. So we won't go into detail about how the attacks work. All right. So what is WAF? WAF is a web application firewall that uses a set of rules to filter and monitor HTTP and HTTPS traffic between web applications and the internet. What is, remember, it's a layer 7 defense system. So it operates at the application layer, and that means it's not suitable for defending against SynFlood. So that's a DDoS type of attack. So that's a layer 4 attack. That's something you use in AntiDdos. So to defend against this, it's a different way. So, well, but it is very good at defending against multiple different types of application layer attacks, and can even be used to detect bots and scrapers, but which not technically count as an attack, but can have an adverse impact on your website. And of course, just like the AntiDdos, Alibaba Cloud WAF is a web service that can be placed in front of any public web origin. So your web server doesn't need to be hosted on Alibaba Cloud. So in order for you to use WAF or WAF, or your web server could live somewhere else, say it has to be in Google Cloud, and you'll still be able to put Alibaba Cloud in front of it similarly. WAF can be put behind other vendors, CDN or DDoS tools, if you want. So it's a very flexible tool, as per se. So Alibaba Cloud has been working on WAF, using it in production now. So for more than 10 years. So we built quite a lot of features in our human machine identification, specific anti-bot features that can detect bots and scrapers, accurate access blocking based on IP address blacklist, and zero-day vulnerability hack fixes that can protect you against brand new threats that don't have a patch yet. And threat intelligence based on all the attack data and we collect every day. And data breach protection, which can actually anonymize data that's being passed back out from your web application. So WAF can monitor both inbound and outbound traffic. And if an attack does somehow make it through WAF, when the attack data is returned for when the data is returned from web application to the attacker WAF, it can actually detect certain patterns like ID numbers, phone numbers, anonymize them by replacing portion of the ID phone number with stars or asterisks. So it can actually keep the attacker from getting up the information they wanted in the first place. So attack vectors addressed by WAF include SQL injection, cross-site scripting, scanners, and probes. Attackers with known origins, well, we caught them those using IP reputation lists, and also most types of bots and scrapers that are designed to interact with your site or application is in an automated way, say to take advantage of a coupon or offer to attack your site in some other way, you know. So in practice, WAF malicious traffic mitigation looks something like this. You have legitimate traffic and attack traffic coming in from internet together. There's all get sent to WAF together, and then WAF has to use both the threat intelligence model and the IP reputation data as well as the human rules written by an expert. You can add that if you like to identify the threat traffic and wrap it. So in the end, what reaches your back end, what reaches your web server, web application is the only legitimate traffic. All right. All right. So that's all for application security. Let's now turn our attention to data security. And that's security both for data and in transit. All right. So as I say, that's a security both for data and in transit and also at rest. And I'll talk about a little bit of the legal and compliance content moderation. How do you deal with user-generated content? So let's start by talking about our SSL certificate service. All right. So SSL certificate service is designed for encrypting and protecting data in transit. So before we talk about SSL certificate service, we need to give a little bit of background information on SSL and in web access in general. So when you visit a website like google.com, you are actually using the HTTP protocol. That's the protocol that your computer or your browser uses to communicate with Google. So this is common application layer protocol on the internet today. So this is probably the most common protocol in use in the internet today. The problem is it doesn't include built-in encryption. And that's what SSL does. SSL, or Secure Socket Layer, provides a public key encryption technology that can work with HTTP to encrypt HTTP traffic. And actually, I should say modern implementation of this encryption are called TLS. It's not a tender loving care. It's a transport layer service. So TLS, not SSL, but you still see SSL talk about frequently in the documentation and conversations online. So what is HTTPS? So HTTPS is just encrypted HTTP. So it's HTTP plus SSL. Most modern websites use HTTPS now. It's quite rare to visit a website that doesn't use HTTPS. So what is an SSL or a TLS certificate? There you go. This is essentially a document that you put on your web server that is used to encrypt the communication between your web server and your end user web browser or application. That's the protocol in your computer or your browser. It uses to communicate with Google, and this is a common application layer protocol on the internet. This is probably the most common in use in the internet today. The problem is it doesn't include built-in encryption. That's when SSL does. So SSL secure socket layer provides a public encryption technology that can work with HTTP to encrypt HTTP traffic. And actually, I should say modern implementations of this encryption are called TLS, not SSL. But you'll still see SSL talk about frequently in some documentations and conversations online. So what is HTTPS? It's mainly just an encrypted HTTP. So it's HTTP again. Remember, it's just an HTTP plus SSL. Most modern websites use HTTPS. Now it's as I say, it is very rare to visit any website that doesn't use HTTPS. All right. Now, so see, where are we? Did my slide move already? How does it? So how does it signs? Does it get signed? But where's my slide? CSRCA. So what is an SSL or TLS? Again, this is essentially a document that you put on your web server that is used to encrypt communication between your web server and the end user's web browser and application. An SSL certificate contains two things. One, it contains a copy of your public key. This is the key that you'll send to the web browser on the customer's end or the client's end to encrypt communications with your web server. But then it also contains a cryptographic signature from the third party, verifying that you really are the owner of that certain .com site or mysite.com. So how does it get signed? How does it get signed? So what you do is you create a CSR certificate signing request that includes details, as you can see on the screen, about your website and also your public key. You give that to the CA certificate authority. They verify the details and they issue you with the SSL cert, which is a document containing both of your public key and cryptographic signature, as I said a while ago. From the CA, that validates you as the owner of that com or the any site.com. Modern web browsers like Chrome will only trust websites that have SSL certificate that is signed by a valid CA. So it's very important to have a signed SSL certificate. If you're doing something as an experiment or locally, just for testing, you can create what is so called the self-signed certificate. But if you use that in production on the website, your users will get a big red warning that says this site is untrusted. So it's always a good idea in production to use a certificate that has been signed by a known valid CA or certificate authority. So the SSL certificate service actually automates this process. It allows you to purchase a certificate directly through the SSL certificate console, and then it goes through the process of validation and signing for you with one of the Alibaba CA partners. Once you have the valid SSL certificate that you bought through the service, you can one-click deploy it on WAF, onto the CDN, onto the AntiDdos, onto the ECS, onto the server load balancer, onto where that you want. It even gives you an option if you need to revoke any certificate. If a certificate has been stolen or compromised, obviously, you need to revoke it to keep it from fooling your user, so that there's an option to revoke your certificates through the SSL certificate console. All right, so again, we can use it to deploy HTTPS as many other cloud products, including AntiDdos, WAP, load balancer, CDN, OSS, and even RDS database service. So all of these services can be protected by SSL certificate service. Let's move to the KMS. So KMS is a key management service and also encryption service focused on managing encryption keys. So with KMS, you no longer have to spend time to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your keys. KMS does this for you. It integrates very easily with the other services like RDS and optic storage service, and allows you to perform encryption at the rest of ECS disks. So for OSS buckets and for data in RDS databases, it's an envelope encryption and technology, so you can actually use KMS to store and encrypt other keys. So, oh, sorry, that's the slide for KMS, sorry guys. So here, essentially, if you want, you can use it in a scenario like this here, where you're protecting your HTTPS certificate from being stolen. So what you do is you create a master key in KMS. You encrypt your HTTPS certificate, so your SSL certificate, and then you only decrypt the certificate when you need to serve web requests. So you can actually use KMS as a way to achieve additional security on top of your SSL certificate by keeping the certificate locked away in KMS and safe from tampering or replacement. Another place where you could use KMS would be for local encryption and the decryption of data. So you could create a master key in KMS. Then you generate a key that you use to encrypt and decrypt data stored in ECS instance disk. And then what you can do is actually store the data encryption key, the data encryption, and then the data encryption key and decrypting data on your disk alongside the KMS master key later. So when you need to decrypt the data, you take the encrypted data encryption key, pass to KMS, and use it to decrypt the data from your backup. So it's a good way to protect other encryption keys that is primarily used for KMS. So let's now move to, in entirely on a different direction and look for content moderation. So this has nothing to do with data security. Let's see. It has more to do with the business and platform security. If you're in the business of providing platform that allows users to upload their own contents, you'll probably have to do some type of filtering. You want to eliminate advertising, violence, inappropriate content, maybe pornography. You might want to keep these things off your platform in order to do that. You need some kind of automated filtering tool, and that's what content moderation does. It provides API that you can pass images, video, text, and audio to, and then it will analyze the content to see if there's anything that matches a set of filter criteria. If it finds something that matches those criteria, it can either pass the content to a human for a second stage review or directly reject the content. So this is a way to cut down on the amount of moderation, human moderation that you have to do on your platform. So it's it can also do a site inspection so that the service can set up to a regular check public facing website for inappropriate content. For and there's again the content moderation API, which you can build into web services. So if you're trying to detect violent, terroristic, pornographic, or maybe ad-based content and keep it off your platform, you can use the content moderation API to help you achieve that. So by simply building the API service into your website, so anytime a user uploads text or images or video, you can pass that to the API and have it make a judgment about whether or not the content is appropriate. And that's all for today, guys. So
Good afternoon again, partners. So the team would like to thank you for attending today's session. So we hope that you enjoyed while learning and hope to see you all again in our next enablement.